Hi, this is part 3 in a React series to build a React app. We're starting with some basic to-do apps, and we'll be building on from there, changing our components and making it more robust as we go along. So in our last app, we just kind of got it going, made our basic app, and rendered it to the screen. We see it right here, my app. So now what we want to do is we just want to create our basic to-do list. So we have our components folder. We're going to want a second folder because we're using TypeScript to create a set of interfaces. So interfaces are basically the way you can type objects in TypeScript. So let's make a folder, interfaces. Where is it? There it is. And let's create a new file, index.ts, and open it up. So right now, the app's pretty small. We might refactor this later on. Right now, we're just going to export all our interfaces from the interface folder. So we're going to write two interfaces right now. We're going to create an interface for to-dos, and that's going to contain an ID, which will be optional. So that question mark means that it's optional. And it will be a number. Completed, which will be a Boolean. And text, which will be a string. That's our first one. And then we want one for our to-do list. So we're going to create a second interface. Interface. And we're going to call that to-do list. Make it an object. And then the first part of that is just going to be our to-dos in an array and our to-do list. Whoops. No. And we're going to want a onClick function. And we're just going to set that to any right now because what it's going to actually pass as in the React component is specific to HTML events, and I don't want to get into those right now. So we're just going to say any for right now. The current settings to TypeScript in here is no implicit any's. So if you're going to say something is any, which means it can be anything, so now it can be a string. It's just string number or whatever. No implicit any's means you can't just have a property with nothing. It must actually say any. So now I'm going to want to export both of these and say to-dos and to-do list. Okay? Hit save, save that. And now we're going to go back to our components and we're going to create a new file called, whoops, I don't want a new file there. I want a new file here. todos.tsx. And just like before, we're going to import our React so we can write JavaScript in here, or I mean HTML. And then we're going to import the to-dos interface from our interfaces. So right now I'm getting errors because I'm not using them. But basically, then we want to create a to-do function that does something, is something, and returns something. And we're going to want to export this as default so we can just import it directly without the curly braces. And right now that's pretty good, but that's not exactly what we want it to be. So in order to make our to-do, so our to-do is going to have a few things. First of all, it's going to have it's going to be a list element. And so we want to return a list element with a few properties. So the first property that we're going to want on it is an onClick event, which will equal our function, an onClick function that we're going to pass to this component. And to do that, we're going to write onClick here as a parameter in this object. And we're actually, let's just do, we also wanted to send in our to-do. So we have our to-do information. And then outside of there, we're going to type this as an object where it has an onClick property called onClick, which is any, like we said before. And it's going to take our to-dos. All right, fantastic. Let me just space that down here. So now we have our onClick, it's any, and if you hover over it's cool, you can see it. So a to-do is a to-dos, import to-dos, property is a to-dos. This works so nicely and it gives you so much information. So basically, if you saw back in our interface, we have a property called completed. So completed is a status that will change the style of the object or of the list element by setting the text decoration if the to-do is completed, and we're going to use a ternary operator here. We're going to say, give it the property line through, or we're just going to say none. String none. So basically we want the CSS to say, or the style, inline style to say line through or none. And finally, we actually want to print out what it says, and we want to say to-do.text. And that'll output our text item. I think we're pretty much done with our to-do. Hit save. Let's X out our HTML element. How do I close this? Well, I don't need these open anymore. Let me close my interfaces. Let me close my index.html. And I need to create a new file. So this is going to be called to-do-list.tsx. And in that file, we're going to actually be creating the unordered list for our to-dos. So we're going to import as React from React again, just like before. And then we want to import we probably want to import both the to-do list and the to-dos from our interfaces, and import the to-do because we're going to want to list them out from to-do. All right, great. And so this is going to be the same thing. We're going to export. We're going to say const to-do list, constant, and then we're going to export that. Okay. Right now this thing's pretty angry because look at that. It must constant must always be initialized because technically, you know, it's immutable at this point, meaning it can't be changed. So it would have to be at least like, you'd have to always set it to something and then you remove that error. But in this case, I want it to be a function. That returns an unordered list. So it's going to take two parameters, our to-dos and our on-to-do click event. And let's type that as to-do list. Nice, no errors. And we're going to say, we're going to create a UL and close that UL. And inside our unordered list, we have to have a properties. we're going to have to actually print out our to-dos. So what we're going to do is we're going to interpolate those with our curly brackets and say to-dos, and we know it's an array, so we're going to map over it. We're going to output each to-do, type it as a to-dos, and then just say to-dos so many times. And then return the to-do element with the key equaling to-do ID. And then in to-do, we just want it to equal to-do, so easy. And then on click, we want that to equal, well, we want it to return the on to-do click. We're losing it here. Actually, I always like formatting my property or organizing my properties so I can see them nice in order. And then to-do ID, pass that to-do click, to-do ID. Okay, and it looks like we have a small error, expected identifier. Oh, we want to close our brackets. So it should be right here. All right, save that. And now we should be able to list out our to-dos if we put them in our app. So let's leave my app as a heading. And let's import to-do list from to-do list. Oops. To-do list. And let's to-do list. And in our to-do list, it takes a to-dos, which we don't have any right now, which is not good, and an on to-do click event. So we're going to want to pass it a function that takes a number. So we're just going to say, for now, let's just pass in console log. That's a function. Should work fine. And then close this up. And we still have a couple errors here. So, let's see. I have one parent element. Oh, yeah, we can't have them in line like this. So what I can do is just put the div right there. Maybe give this one an H1. Give it a header. All right, and then we just need our to-do. So for now, let's just create some test to-dos. And hey, we have to-dos here, so let's type them. And that'll be equal to an array. And in that array, we're going to want objects that have an ID and a completed status and a text. So we'll say to do 1. And let's just copy this, paste a couple, change some of the information. Oops. Okay, and pass that test to-dos into there. Boom! We got them. As simple as that. Cannot find name to-dos. Oh, because we're not importing it. So let's import it. And say to-dos from, oops, interfaces. Hit the column, hit save. Now we got them. And if we click on them, you can see in the console there, it should console log the number of the to-dos for right now. Okay, in the next video, we'll actually start to get into looking into actually creating our to-dos, and actually, instead of putting them here, actually creating a Redux store and putting them in the store. All right, see you in the next video. Any questions, put them in the comments.